class of 1971. Dennis was a four-year winner as one of the most decorated players a four-year letter winner as one of the most decorated players in Holy Cross football history, and that right there says an awful lot. He was a preseason All-American prior to his senior season, and you know, they don't even do very much on the All-America stuff anymore. So even back then, when you were selected as a preseason All-America, that was something very, very special. And he finished as the Class 4A Defensive MVP. He's one of only two players in school history to win that football award. He anchored the line on a team that was ranked #1 in the state most of the year. He was the first team defensive tackle and the outstanding lineman on the state's item 1970 all-city team. That was also something very special, and was the first team defensive tackle and outstanding lineman from the Louisiana Sports Writers, and they're always a tough vote, and the 1970 4A all-state football team. Dennis was one of three Tigers named to the all-state team as a football player in his junior season. He was also a football player on the Louisiana Coaches 4A Top 20 list. He accepted a scholarship to Tulane University, where he played offensive line for the Green Wave. And unless you're a Tulane fan and you follow this, that claim to fame means he was there in 72, 73, and 74. Tulane hadn't beaten LSU in a quarter of a century. In 72, they almost ended the streak and finished on the 1 yard line, maybe the half yard line. And in 73, they finally broke the streak, and Terry Looney threw 2 touchdown passes, and Tulane won the game 14-0, and Dennis Delaney was on the field as a lineman for both of those touchdown passes. When you talk to people about Dennis Delaney and you ask them what type of a player was he, the first thing they'll tell you, well, the ones who knew him back at Holy Cross will tell you he came to Holy Cross off the playgrounds at Lakeview as a chubby little kid that John Kalbacher had to challenge to be a good football player. But what John Kalbacher didn't know was Dennis Delaney loved a challenge. And he took that challenge and he challenged himself. He could not stand to make a mistake. And that's why he had all the honors at Holy Cross. And when he got to Tulane, if he made a mistake, sometimes one that the coaches wouldn't catch, sometimes one the officials wouldn't catch, he'd go nuts. And then that 1972 game, when they didn't beat LSU, he flinched. I think it was 72. If it's Dennis, if I got this wrong, it was 73, just correct me, but he flinched. He flinched. And he flinched with his eyes. And he kind of did a little flinch on the offensive line. That should have been a flag, 5 yards, illegal procedure. The official missed it. He knew he made a mistake. The next play runs, it's good. The next play, to make up for what he did, he drove his defensive lineman that he's lined up against 30, 35 yards down the field and into the end zone. Wouldn't let up, because that's the type of competitor he was. He was just a passionate competitor and a person who's passionate about Holy Cross and about Tulane. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the class of 2019 Holy Cross Hall of Fame, Dennis Delaney.
Wow, quite an award. I want to thank the Holy Cross Hall of Fame Selection Committee for selecting me for this great honor. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank my classmates, Al Perry and Bobby Poche, who submitted my name to the Hall of Fame. Especially Al Perry, who put together such a flattering resume in my high school career that I thought I was reading about Newt Rockman instead of myself. But I appreciate his hard work in my behalf. I came to Holy Cross for 3 reasons. I was a big Notre Dame fan, and I knew that Holy Cross was affiliated with Notre Dame. So it was a slam dunk on that. I also wanted to go to the best football program in the city. The type of program that had the kind of athletes that would make me a better athlete. And once again, it's Holy Cross. And finally, my uncle, John Carbo, well, he's my godfather, actually, played for Holy Cross in the 50s. So I had 3 good reasons for coming here. But I tell you what, I had to get up early in the morning and catch that long bus ride from Lakeview all the way to the old school. I started to have second thoughts. At least until I got off that bus and I start walking towards Holy Cross, and I could hear the band play at 7:30 in the morning. So when I finally got to the school, they were having a pep rally for the football team that just lost their first game against LaGrange. It was at that moment I said to myself, I'm at the right place. You know, when I received a letter saying I made the Hall of Fame, of course I was honored and touched. But you know, I start to think about, well, what makes me so special? I mean, there were a lot of great athletes at Holy Cross. Why me? And the more I thought about it, I said, well, I'm really not that special. You see, I'm obsessive compulsive, so if I missed a tackle, that was a bad thing. I mean, I would figure a way to do it better. So, to me, I wasn't that special. But I tell you what was special, was the support and guidance I got throughout my high school career by the people that surrounded me. I first have to acknowledge my parents. My dad, who was a NASA engineer on the Apollo program, took the time out of his busy schedule to film not only my Little League games, but all my high school games. But he didn't interfere with my enjoyment of the game. He just let me play. And my mother, who not only cooked good meals, but when I would come home whining like a little baby about my little football injuries, she would look at me and say, if you want to play football, you better be a man. And then I'd look at my mother and say, since when did my mother become a football coach? But you know, a few years before she died, she said, Dennis, she said, every time you played a football game, I was so afraid that you would get seriously injured. You know something? She never told me that, because she knew if she said something, it would affect the way I played. So I had great support and love by my parents. Now, the person that taught me, that gave me a head start on how to play football, was my older brother, Bob. He was an all-state football player at Redemptus High School. When I was 8 years old, my dad bought me a Chicago Bear football outfit, because he knew I idolized Bobby, and he thought I might want to play. So one day I put this outfit on, and Bobby walks in, and he says, you want to play football? And I said, yeah. And he said, you're going to have to tackle me. Well, Bobby was 3 times my size. But I was ready for the challenge. I was going to show Big Brother how tough I was. Well, he ran over me. But he hit me so hard that when I got up, I not only had one brother Bobby, I had 2 brother Bobbies. But I found out something about myself today. I found out that I would never let anybody intimidate me, not even Big Brother Bobby. So I got up mad and I said, do it again. And he ran over me again. But this time, he let me tackle him as a reward for my effort. Bobby taught me everything about football. He taught me how to train for football. He taught me how to hit. He taught me agility drills. But the biggest thing he taught me, he said, Dennis, don't just do what's expected of you. Do more. So my first day on the 85-pound football team, I took his advice. After practice was over and the coach said, run to the fence and back, I ran around the whole park. After that, the coach made everybody run around the whole park. In fact, they called it the Delaney model. You see, I can't even say my own name. Sometimes when my teammates would say the Delaney model, it was almost like they were saying a curse word. But anyway, Bobby gave me the tools to succeed. And I would use those tools throughout my football career. And then there was Coach John Callback. What a great coach he was for me. I really loved that guy. He was like a football general on that field. He guided his assistant coaches, but he didn't interfere with their jobs. And his practices, they were like lessons in precision. Every drill was timed. When the time was up, he'd blow the whistle, and we'd sprint to the next drill. And he wasn't a do-over guy. If you made a mistake, he wouldn't do it over and over until you got it right. No, you'd have to get that the next day. He never looked back, he looked forward. In fact, in the playoffs, we were all having a bad practice. And he yelled at us, he said, "Get your butts off this field, you don't deserve to be on." So we're running off the field, and you know something about somebody running you off the field, it psychologically works on you. And we start thinking, well, wait a minute, if we don't practice, we might not win the playoff game. So the next day, we had the best practice, and we won that playoff game. And Coach Callbacker was a great motivator. Mike Arthur, who I played with at both Holy Cross and Tulane, was telling me about his older brother, Larry Arthur, who I played with as a freshman at Holy Cross. He said Larry went to the hospital to see his aunt. And while he was there, he saw Coach Callbacker, whose wife was in the hospital dealing with cancer. And so they started to talk to each other. And Larry said, "Coach, you saved my life." And Coach said, "Well, how did I save your life?" And he said, "Coach, after Mark Essex shot me on the side, on top of the Howard Johnson, I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. I just couldn't move. I was standing there with a shotgun in one hand, waiting for Essex to come around that bunker and finish me off." He said, "But while I was standing there, I could hear your voice in my head. This is the fourth quarter. You got to suck it up. Gut it out till you beat this." And that's what inspired me to get to the door and save my life, Coach. So I couldn't have had a better coach than Coach Callback. And finally, there's my teammates. You know, I don't understand people, some college and professional athletes today, who think the team is all because of them and they can do what they want. To me, from the first team to the scout team, every one of those people contributed not only to the success of the team, but to the success of each individual, including myself. In fact, as an example, in 1969, when I first made All-State, we had a really good defense. They scored, in the regular season, they scored 17 points against us. And the 2 touchdowns were the worst teams in the district on freak plays. We won 3 games, 3-0, because of the clutch field goal kicking of Dave Falgout. If Dave Falgout don't make those field goals, we don't go to the playoffs. And if we don't go to the playoffs, then I don't have the best game of my life that I had against Bogalusa. So I don't make All-State. So Dave Falgout helped me make All-State. And then on the other side of the line for me was Steve Farrer. Now Steve Farrer, most of the time got in the backfield before me. And that would influence quarterbacks and the backs to come my way. Well, I should have put a welcome sign on my hat, because I was sure happy to meet, greet, defeat him. And that's because, and so Steve Farrer made me look good. And Steve Farrer helped me make All-State. And I could say this about every one of my teammates. They helped me succeed. And just one other thing, one other person I got to acknowledge is my brother Jack. Now, Jack couldn't see my first 2 years at Holy Cross because he was a Marine in Vietnam. In fact, a month before my first spring practice, he was in Way City fighting in the Tet Offensive. But he would come back a year later, and he would see all of my rest of my high school games and all of my home college games. So that's a pretty good brother. So it wasn't me that was special. It was my parents that were special. It was my brothers that were special. It was my coaches, particularly my head coach, that was special. and it was my teammates. And I thank them for being in my life. Thank you very much.